MFPers, what's going on? We're back and we are in the week of gratitude, just Thanksgiving week. However, as I like to present to the classes, every day we should be trying to find something that we are, in awe and gratitude, and just find something to really give us balance within our day-to-day mindset of how we view our lives. So today we're going to talk about moving our shift of gratitude towards our body and our physical body, and particularly our hands, and particularly our thumbs. And if we know anything about MFP workouts and stuff that we do here, we know that, our hand health, grip strength, the mighty mitts, or what I'll call them, are super viable and important not just for your fitness and the things that we do here, but for other aspects of longevity that we'll talk about. So let's take our 3 breaths, let's get grounded, and we'll get into our flow. As we shift our mindset here towards the week of gratitude and preparing ourselves to enjoy time with our loved ones, remind yourself that your body is a temple and you get this beautiful gift of the physical experience every single day. And although we'll have a day to indulge, remember that everything that your body provides for you is an important gift every single moment, every single day. And just small reflections of self-love and self-care, and just acknowledging that you love your body through the thick and through the thin. It's always going to allow you to move forward in a positive way. So take a nice deep breath in through your nose. Slow exhale. Inhale again. Exhale. Last one. Big hold here. Slowly control. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Joe's got a
real book.
He's got a real book today, not off the iPad.
No screen. So this is the second time I've done a quote from Good Energy. I just finished reading it. Encourage you to borrow it, actually. So basically, the whole book is just about how creating good energy is the key to health at every level, at the cellular level, emotional level, spiritual level. This. Life's about good energy, man. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I'm gonna read you a couple paragraphs here. If simple habits like eating whole foods, getting enough sleep, practicing regular movement, and managing stress are so transformational, why do so few people consistently perform them? If these simple actions made people so happy and healthy, why aren't we all doing them? I think this question hangs in our collective subconscious and fuels the insidious beliefs in the medical system that, quote, patients are lazy, unquote, and, quote, lifestyle interventions fail, and people, quote, want the easy way out, or that more complex and innovative solutions might be the answer. These criticisms of patients conveniently ignore the fact that trillions of dollars of incentives are pushing us to eat ultra-processed food, be sedentary, sleep less, and live in chronic fear. The truth, practicing simple, good energy habits is an act of rebellion. So, a little taste of that, all right? So, I think about that sometimes too, and we've talked about it before, just how all these practices that make us feel so much better, it's almost like we're taught to not do them. And it's like getting back in touch with our true nature. And a lot of this book we'll go into is not just contemporary practices, but ancient practices, really helps us almost form this, it is a little bit of a rebellion. It's not in a, it's not in a bad way. It's a way of taking back like who we are and our health and ourselves. So highly recommend it.
That's a quote. I mean, we could say that quote for pretty much the beginning of every episode. First thing that comes to my mind is just cultural norms, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I don't want to say this in like, I feel like it's almost every time I'm in spaces and we talk about it, it's like, Western society is the worst. And it's not really. I mean, our country brings a lot of beautiful opportunities for a lot of things, but there is a dark side to our culture and its society in terms of overall health. And at some point we'll really touch on health, and especially as we get towards the new year. But I come back to the two things that have been on my mind. One thought I always kind of present to myself is like, how bad do you want to feel good? Mm-hmm. I always used to tell myself this, especially when I'd be in a space if I'm making a decision with eating or substance use, or if it's the exercise I'm doing or whatever I'm doing. I ask myself like, how bad do I want to feel good? And that's having to get up to do a workout when I'm not feeling it, or maybe making a food choice that isn't as culturally I don't even know if this is the right word. Appealable. Appealing.
Yeah, appealing.
Appealing, culturally appealing to the most, even though it's like this is like a whole food product made organically or from scratch versus like something that's processed, or like if it's out with friends and people are drinking and I choose not to, like I can still enjoy that space. And it's just how bad do I want to feel good, because I know the consequences if I choose to do something that aren't going to potentially make me feel good on the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual level. And there's another quote, I forgot what it was. Go ahead, you say something because I want to think about it.
Well, I want a quote from here.
Or whatever you want to say.
Well, I wanted to quick touch on a small tangent with cultural norms. So I ran the marathon, the Philadelphia Marathon on Sunday. And
I was going to hope we were going to get into this to start it off.
It's not going to be what you think.
Okay.
You want to know what drove me nuts about the marathon? And you probably remember this from running the half marathon, the Love Run. I would say 50 to 60% of the signs are like, beer at the finish line, get drunk so fast, don't worry, you're almost gonna be drunk. Like it was awful. I was like, what? Like that was at least half the signs, like something like incentivizing, like as soon as you do this amazing physical accomplishment, like it's time to just like, imagine how drunk you'll be when you're tired. Like it was just like, I was like, what are we doing here? Like this is, I mean, I saw some cute signs, like, but a lot of it.
There was the one sign that was funny. That was like you're at mile 4. I saw this on Barstool, Philly. Did you see that? You're at mile 4 and you already got more wins. You ran as many miles than the Cowboys.
Yeah. See, signs like that are great. But I was just like, it was just like a moment. I'm like, come on, man. Like this is like running a marathon for everyone is an awesome physical feat, and like, why are we just incentivizing like? We're just doing this to drink. Like, if you drink, it's like no judgment. It's like, come on, like, can you view it from a different perspective?
Exactly.
Very frustrating.
I know, and it's, a lot of people might roll their eyes at us viewing it, but that's so true, right? And I think, and I was having this conversation with somebody the other day about like, let me think about it like this. And this is a topic I want to touch on another day, so we'll kind of use this as like a small intro to it, but I truly believe that our society and cultural norm, we have a relationship epidemic. Mm-hmm. It's like our culture has all these epidemics: obesity, anxiety, addictions. Something. We have an epidemic for something, and many other countries or outsiders might be like, why do they like this is not how we should be functioning from a health perspective. And that really comes down to if we try to have all these different labels of why there's these epidemics, and it really comes down to my personal view is the relationship we have to the root causes of why we're even having the epidemics to begin with. So, for example, if it's obesity, right? Like relationships of like how we culturally view food. If it's anxiety, like how we culturally have a relationship to ourselves and our thoughts and how we're taught to think. How we have, if it's an addiction, there's all these addictions for all these different things. And like, what's actually the root cause of addiction? Like, it's our relationship to our trauma and how we're able to like look inwards and look really like what's the root cause of why this addiction is even coming back to, right? And so many other things. And so coming back to what you're talking about with your quote, and the other thing I was thinking, it was like, if I'm going to use something, if I'm going to eat something, do a movement, in a class, let's say it's like an exercise, like, is this going to make me a better human being? Like before I use it. And like, this is the first step of how we could actually change as a collective society with everything, anything we do is like, if I do this, is this going to make me a better person? And we can look at that from like challenging things. Like we talked about pain last week. Like, if I do this, am I going to be a better human being after I do it? And so like, it's almost like what you said with the run, like you're doing this amazing feat. Like, I'm going to become a better human being mentally because I overcame this challenge. But like, oh, I'm going to go get shit-faced, and I'm going to feel like a worse human being the next day because I did all these. And I'm not trying to hate on alcohol. Another thing I was talking about, not too much of a tangent, but with the same person I was talking about was like, I don't want to seem like to be like Mr. Anti-alcohol, because actually, if you go to a lot of different countries, like alcohol is a very sacred practice. I mean, if you look at the Germans, for example, like how they treat alcohol and how they, put all this good energy into like how they, go through the process of brewing it and all these things. Or if you look at even in our culture societies, like with wine, like the care and the thought process of like how it's a much more different of experience than just like drinking to get shit-faced, right? It's actually a whole respect to the alchemy of how alcohol is formed. But again, like for the most part, our society is putting up billboards of this very low frequency and vibration of alcohol, which is like Miller Lights and Budweisers and all those things. But again, too much of a tangent there. But the whole emphasis, coming back to like we said, we were talking about with your quote and with the meditation, is really reflecting on, how you have this relationship with your physical body. And I come back to like, how do you practice this form of like self-love and self-care on this vehicle that is here to give you this experience for this particular blip in this lifetime? And I say blip because the driver of the vehicle, the soul, it's got a whole eternal experience. And this is just like a quick blip, but it's still an important blip. And for us to have this conscious awareness to come back to, I love this experience I have in this body. And I think a lot of us struggle with that. I mean, I've struggled with it. I still have from time to time do. And, just like with this gratitude season, it's like, we can't take this experience for granted. We really cannot. And we're all going to have different physical experiences, but we can all come back to like, there's something about this physical body for me in this particular lifetime that's going to provide me a lot of growth, a lot of learning, a lot of development. And so I want to make sure that I just, through the thought process, say, like, I love you. Like, I love this body. I love everything you're doing for me. It's easier said than done, but I think that's where we really want to start with as we transition.
I mean, we have this natural inclination to like view ourselves from a critical lens. And one, like as we kind of get into this conversation, I think like a good thought experiment is like, think about like, no matter who you are, like think about like what your body has done for you and like how much you've accomplished and how much you've overcome and like where you're at today, and just like being proud of that and like being grateful for that. Like it's something that I think we forget to do because it's so easy to, think about what we can't do. And, whether you're a former athlete or whether like, you've raised kids and like just gone through that whole like childbirthing experience, like just being proud of like everything that like you've accomplished, and like most importantly, like what your body has done to you is like a really good practice, especially, in the fitness space. Like, it's easy to forget, right? Because there's always something new to do. There's always something you can't do, but take a step back and look at like what you are capable of.
And that's, I mean, look, this is the physical body is just one dimension of our multidimensional potential, but it's a very important one. And I think we see a lot of times poor relationships to our body. I mean, it's inevitable to some extent, because our brain is, again, this hardwire that's trying to compare and think and take all this outside, cultural feedback of what it is. And I think the biggest thing we see is like, poor relationship with our body composition, right? The gift of how our body is shaped and formed. And yeah, like there's a genetic process to some extent, but we do have a lot of control of like how we can shape and form our body and how we even just think about it for what it is. And how do we find the right relationship to acknowledge that, I want to love my body for how it's shaped and formed, but also like, I want to have an expectation for it to be able to have a healthy, healthy capabilities.
Yeah.
And I think like, we want to have in our culture of like, appreciation for, if you are overweight, for example. And I don't want to like get canceled for this, but like, we have like, we want to acknowledge oversized, people and show appreciation for that. And like, yeah, I get it. Like, we want to make sure like that person is showing love and acknowledgement for their bodies and what it does, as long as it's allowing them to have a healthy, like if we look at their physiological, tests and all these things, like if they're in a good state of health, then that's good, right? But if not, then like, we also want to have that balance of how we think about body composition, how it's affecting us. And this is one of the hardest things for a lot of us to have a relationship with our bodies with, having gratitude for, especially when it comes to exercise. Like, what's our relationship to, exercise in particular, in terms of like, am I treating my body, well, or am I trying to like hurt it? Yeah. Am I trying to be in this like endless soreness and pain and discomfort that isn't, am I becoming a better human being after every time I walk out of this door? Like, is this making me feel better? Yeah. And nutrition, obviously, like that's another example of like how we might, poorly express gratitude for our health. And again, that's another touchy subject because like there could be a whole trauma with food for somebody that, that's a hard thing to overcome. Or again, like the cultural norms, like people might not have access to really good foods. And, can we still have gratitude for the foods that we have, even if they're not pure, and also maybe have a good relationship with how like much food we consume that at least have good health, biological health markers, even if, it's not the highest quality food. Yeah. So there's a lot of ways I'm just kind of thinking about this, but and again, this is kind of more open interpretation for you to just, again, reflect a little bit deeper of like, ways that we want to express a positive relationship to this physical vehicle that we have.
Yeah, especially because we have this like natural tendency to want to like, to feel like, not want to, but almost feel like we have to like make ourselves hurt in a way. Like if you go back to just like, think about like how work culture is here. Like, it's almost like a rite of passage of like working so hard and like grinding and like making your health suffer and your sleep suffer because like, this is what you do. And it was the same thing. Like if there's like, college kids, like that's a big college thing. Like you just aren't like, it's like, oh, it's what you do. Like you don't sleep. Like we have this like social expectation that like, you like to be harsh on yourself, and it kind of manifests in the physical space too. Like there's a reason why like some people will really crave that like crushing workout where like they feel like they really were hard on their bodies. It's just we're not naturally inclined to be kind to ourselves and to really do what's like best to like honor our like actual body, whether what we eat, how we sleep, how we move. Like we are so pulled away from that in all different aspects of life.
Yeah. This is hard, right? I mean, we're just talking in general. I think the thing that comes to mind as we wrap this up is like, how do we find the balance point, right? How do we find the balance point of wanting to thrive? Because I think this is a big thing is like, you know, trying to do things that are going to make us better within the physical body, whether if that's, you know, showing up here and challenging yourself physically and challenging yourself to, you know, make the effort to meal plan. And, you know, on the other side is like, how do we find, you know, self-love and compassion for ourselves? That's another point of like, you know, I love me for who I am and what I do and, you know, the choices that I make, even if they're not the best. But if we still come back to like, I love myself and you keep practicing this self-compassion, you're probably more inclined to eventually make the choices that are going to make you feel like a better human being on the physical plane. And then also, how do we like, you know, how do we balance away like the fear aspect too, especially with the physical exercise? And so like, you know, these are all parts of the human experience and journey that we all have. I mean, I definitely have all of the fluctuations, ups and downs with this. And again, it comes back to the one thing I think we can do, coming back to the whole cultural norm, is just to expand our consciousness and awareness. The more we expand our consciousness, the more we go inward, the more we start to think a little bit differently about our perspectives, about all of our dimensions, you know, things will start moving in a more positive direction as a whole. So, but we're going to stay into the physical realm today for the most part, and let's stay on the body and let's stay with this concept of gratitude, because there are, you know, magnificent things that your body does every single day, whether if you're awake, whether if you're asleep, that are just purely, you know, a reflection of the infinite intelligence, which is God, which is source. And the way our body creates and the way our body functions is truly, truly a gift. And most of us won't be able to understand it unless you start looking into like anatomy and physiology and biology, which I love these things, and biomechanics of how the body functions. But there's one area in particular in our body that I think we could really reflect on and not take for granted, which is the function of our hands. And I mean, just think about it, right? I mean, if you didn't have any limb, but just in terms of the capacity to use your hands, from the very minute things that we do on a day-to-day basis with our general motor skills, from, you know, brushing your teeth, to grabbing the wheel of the car, to drive to the gym, to do all the plethora of hand things that we do in the gym, of the things you grab onto, to the grip training, to the different things that we'll talk about. You know, it's such an important thing for me, at least, to come back to like, damn, like we have this really special part of our body that does some really cool things. And there's thousands, I mean, all parts of your body are beautiful, but I really come back to this grip gratitude.
Yeah, and it's good to come to that place too, like without, you know, knowing of what life is like without it, because a lot of times it takes us to realize like how like amazing something is if we like can't use it. For example, like if you have like a little injury, like a thumb injury, like me, you're like, man, I never really realized like how much I use my thumb for. And it's like, you know, it's so normal to that, like how it's happened to me a bunch, you know, like whether it's just a super important body part like your hands, or something like one of your toes. Like it is an important practice to really appreciate like what, you know, like the intricacy of this body part, and have some sort of awe towards it without being like forced to be like living without it, you know?
No, 100%. I call them the mighty mitts. I mean, they really are obviously valuable. I mean, imagine if you didn't have a hand to do, you know, the things that you do on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, if we talk about the anatomy, the way I think about it, I love talking about the foot anatomy in terms of like, you know, I believe 33 muscles, you know, there's just as many tendons and ligaments that connect the muscles to each other, the muscles to the bone within the foot, and these little intrinsic details that the feet have are exactly the same within the hand. And the anatomy is so vast in terms of like how much there is. Like I don't even know the exact names of all these muscles, and because like there's so many. And not only that, like the way that these muscles are formed, like they connect all the way into the wrist and to form the elbow. Like it really starts with your hand when it comes to potentially elbow and shoulder and scapula health, and same as how the feet work in terms of your ankle, knee, hip, and low back health. So if we start with these areas first and really just acknowledge the importance of that, and then two, on top of that, because there's so much blood flow, there's so much going on in this, like the amount of neurons and sensation points within our hands are 10 times greater than a lot of other places in our body, with the hands and the feet, which makes them very, very sensitive from a physical standpoint, but also to an energetic standpoint that we can't even see or realize. So there's a whole lot of details that come into the anatomy in the hand. However, the one part of the hand that is the most magnificent to me is the thumb. And so I call this the power of thumb, and I'll reference a lot what we just talk about from here on to this article, which we'll place into the caption here of this podcast, called The Power of Thumb. And it really just is a journey of me talking about really why the hand and the thumb are important. It's not important not just to the physical things that you guys do here at CrossFit every single day and all the madness of the workouts that I make here, but also to other forms of our health that it goes far beyond the physical. So the first reflection I think of with having a thumb is that the humanoid, meaning like the physical specimen that we have, the body, and is very unique because us and primates are really the only species on the planet that have a thumb, that have this digit. So just within that, in terms of like from a science and biomechanical standpoint, like that means we're designed to have a thumb for a certain reason to do these very, little motor-based skills on our day-to-day basis, whatever we do.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things too, where it's like, how much do you really like sit there and think about your thumbs? No, most people don't, but I do think that it's important to also, like, when I think about like grip strength too, like I try not to break it down into individual parts, but just like appreciate like how something like your hands are connected to like the whole being aspect of who you are. Like something I think is like one of the biggest flaws with how we view health and medicine is like we break everything down to specific body parts. Like you think about doctors, like a whole doctor can make their whole career on like one little part of the ear.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
One doctor can make a
earlobe doctor.
Yeah, you can make a lot of money being an earlobe doctor. You can make a lot of money specializing in just the hand, but like everything is so interconnected, like from your hands up to like your complete nervous system.
That's actually a really good point.
And I think that's like worth, and that's actually, I can't say that came from my own brain. That's part of the good energy philosophy.
Yeah.
So talk a lot about that, how like we have to stop like segmenting and like specializing. So like in medicine, there are 42 specialties for one physical body.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that is actually quite wild. And again, like that's something that, again, like we standardize, and like, yeah, sure, there's a lot of good things that have come from all that, right, within, our medical world, but also like, do we really have to go that far to really find the root causes of why we're actually having the problems to begin with? And the real answer to that, to be honest, is no.
Yeah.
I mean, take it as you like, guys, but that's really the answer. And even though we are going to break down the thumb and the importance of the hand, the bigger idea is like how it actually does play a role to the structural whole, and that's how we kind of want to view it. That's how I usually try to view a lot of things that we do here, right? It's just not one part. When we talk about like core to extremity, like how the midline generates the force to all the outside. So it's one whole unit that works together. So when we talk about the thumb, first thing we want to acknowledge in terms of like just being how, having a lot of gratitude for what it does. Like it's literally a lever that produces a ton of force compared to the other fingers. So if I were just to do like a drill like this, where I kind of like took two fingers from the other hand, placed it on top of my thumb, and I tried to flex the thumb down, almost like you're doing a thumb war, right? Like you can notice the difference of like how much force it's able to produce versus the others, right? And that's because literally in terms of like physics, the stature of the thumb is shorter, it's more it's stockier in terms of its size, but it also has thicker muscle mass because it is a thicker thumb. It is able to produce more force and thus more power versus the longer limbs. Not saying that these other fingers don't have other uses in terms of being valuable, but because of this biomechanical equation and the ability of it to produce force, it makes it super unique, especially when it comes to doing activities with physical fitness. And obviously we can talk about all the other things that could be valuable for that you do on a day-to-day basis, from cooking, cleaning, grabbing on the things, but specifically with fitness, I typically see, especially with people new to this space, like a lack of awareness of using the thumb. And I wouldn't expect anything else. Like if you're not taught, the importance of using your thumb. But I would say like common misuses or just unawareness that I would typically see with somebody new is like, and you hear us do it all the time, like when you hang, we would say, hey, use your thumb, wrap your thumb around the bar. Or if it's like holding onto a barbell or gripping it, like I'll see people not hold their thumbs around the bar. So it'll look like this. It's called the suicide grip. So I call suicide safety because there is an actual safety precaution, especially if I'm going to press the bar this way without my thumb. Or I say like careless carrying, where you're just not maybe as aware of how to lock in your grip and really stabilize the thumb to produce more force in how you carry and obviously for your strength and in your endurance. So, those are a few things I would typically see, we typically see as coaches, with people, or just being aware of. And I think for the most part, like people know that like we really drill down like using your thumb. And the question is, well, why? Why do I even have to like really care about my thumb? And it comes back to this whole idea of like, well, if we look at how the big toe functions in the feet, like the amount of force it produces means that you will create more stability, not just within the hand, but there's a whole chain. If you guys are looking at the video here, you'll see this whole chain. You obviously got this nice meaty part here, right? And it's going to connect to the wrist, transfer all the way up to my flexors and extensors here in my forearm that attached to my elbow joint, which are really important for stability, and my tendons and ligaments here. And that will go up to the chain into the bicep and triceps, all the way into my shoulder girdle and create more stability. Now, if I didn't use the thumb, could I still create tension in all those areas I just named? Yes, but not as much force. So really I'm looking at it in a way of like, well, if you got a thumb, might as well use it, right? Like it's there, but you're getting more out of the whole musculature and function to create a more efficient way of stabilizing the whole upper body unit. So just being really aware that, there's a rhyme and reason of like really making sure that you guys are being aware of how you grip things plays a big role into potentially how you're going to perform. Now, are there excuses for not using a thumb for an exercise or whatever? Yeah, sure. I mean, like if I let's say for a daily thing, like I hold the wheel like this, whatever. But I also like to grab the thumb around the wheel.
I like the full grip.
I like a full grip too.
I like the full grip.
But so like what are excuses? Let's just say for in the gym specifically. One would obviously be like if you have an injury and you can't use your thumb, maybe we're cooking and you cut your thumb or whatever, or something happened, like, yeah, obviously. If you have specific mobility limitations, so let's just say like front rack, for example. Like, there's a big difference if you front rack without your thumb with it, like, because again, that whole chain connects. And so, like, yeah, maybe it might be helpful to front rack without your thumb or something like that. Another idea would be like, would I intentionally try to use my thumb to explore some variety of strengthening my grip? That would be, I would say, like an intentional way of like actually not using the thumb to receive a certain stimulus for a certain reason. Another reason would be just like, hey, you don't have a thumb. Yeah. And then the last would be, which we would see a lot for people who've done CrossFit, is like, if you are a competitive CrossFit athlete or somebody, like I'll see like somebody, they're doing like a pull-up record and like they're not using their thumb. Like, would I say like, yeah, I think you would get more out of if you use your thumb? Yeah, but like there's anomalies, and there see people who do in competitive CrossFit, for example, they hold the bar without their thumbs, and it maybe allows them to slide on the bar. They might have grips and move with kipping or butterfly kipping. But again, like they're doing it for a very specific stimulus for performance output. And where I'm coming back to is like, we're trying to make this practical for a different stimulus. Like your stimulus, and most of our people that come in here, their output is like, I want to be a better human being. Like, coming back to like, am I doing this to be a better human being? And this is going to allow me to have more stability, strength, awareness in my upper body? Is it going to have more prehab injury prevention circumstances? And is it just a more functional ability for me to use my thumb? So all that there is just like food for thought for you of like, yeah, like there's a reason why we want to, use our thumbs when it comes to like physical tasks.
Yeah, I mean, it will also too, like it should be pretty obvious why like grip then becomes one of the most important contributors to longevity. Like it's not really, when you think about your thumb in this context, it's not really a mystery why. Like, longevity is like not necessarily living longer, but like doing things you love longer. So like having the ability to like be more proactive, and it all kind of comes down from this like, one of your sense of touch. So like being able to actually handle the things that, and like hold on to the things that comes your way for a long period of time. Like when you think about it in that sense, like it's not a secret. It's not like a medical mystery why, like if you read any longevity book, why like grip strength is directly correlated with, longevity and higher quality of life throughout age.
Yeah, I mean, let's make it practical, right? Like let's think about, some other than the stuff that you do here. I think that's one of the good things that we'll get into too, Joe. That's good that you pointed that out. A very simple test. I'll call it Marco test, but I learned this actually from my sensei at Westchester, CrossFit Westchester, Steve Wakefoos, where we were talking about using the thumb with gripping. And Steve is well trained in self-defense. So he works in the self-defense world, grappling world, and he looks at, this idea of using your thumb for a much more specific reason than, we would. But he said, all right, well, hold out your arm. So extend out your arm to me. He said, all right, I want you to grab my wrist with your thumb. I said, all right, now try to pull away. Right? Okay, relax. All right, so he's like, okay, well, obviously got that. Now extend your arm out again. Grab your wrist without your thumb. So if I grab your wrist like that, go ahead, try to pull away. Right? So he got away.
Easy.
So in terms of like practical ideas, right? Like that's your first test, right? Obviously the thumb creates a form of stability. Now, when you were saying about longevity, which we can touch on, one of the most studied concepts of longevity of people who have the capacity to potentially physically live longer is that they are capable, and this isn't just one of the this is like one out of probably many variables, but their ability to have grip strength and grip endurance. And I'll talk about why, but one of the tests that you can use, it's a very old school test, it's called a dynamometer. It's basically something that you would squeeze, and it's going to give you a result of, a number, and that's the amount of force that you can produce, basically like your strength and power within a very short amount of time within the dynamometer. So that'll give you actual feedback of like what your strength is. So they had all these numbers for people from different ages, and they noticed obviously the ages of individuals who could create more force with the dynamometer were obviously much more fulfilled with their longevity physical task at their ages who were older. And I can go into why for that in a second, but I just want to touch on that because there is potentially the ability of like your ability to have grip stamina to like your potential to live longer and more fulfilled. And then lastly, we talk about like efficiency and prehab, kind of like what I talked about with like how the thumb connects all the way to the scapula by using it. So when we do with things like hanging. So like these are practical things. But with all that said, like all you listening are most likely members of the gym. And you know that me personally, I probably have too much, I'll just admit it, like I have too much sometimes of an obsession with grip intensive workouts. Like I make up really grippy workouts.
Pinch grip swings.
And some of this is probably because I'm traumatized from my CrossFit Games experiences and like early CrossFit days where like so many tests were so grippy of like grip was just always such a big factor into, some of these workouts that were developed. But again, my mindset has come to like the whole longevity to it. So we do a lot of grip in the gym here because of its longevity value. And we see a lot of variety, right? Like you just said, we were doing this whole past phase, like once every 4 weeks, we would do like a plate pinch style workout on Tuesday. We have plate pinches, just a different way to grab something. Obviously, we do a ton of farmer carries, unilateral or bilateral. We do a ton of variations of hanging, not just on the bar, but on the rings, low rings and horizontal hanging. We do a ton of, we'll do different forms of kettlebell work, like a bottoms up kettlebell, rope climb, rope work. We'll do even just like we talk about like hands on the floor and creating tension through the grip of your hands produces more force all the way up the chain. And you'll just see maybe workouts that are metabolic workouts that like are maybe one grip intensive movement into another. So we have the whole concept of like grip endurance and stamina within the workout that create a whole new stimulus. And so, obviously you guys experience a lot of that, whether if it's like I intentionally have us do deadlifts with a double overhand. Like a lot of that is actually not common. You'll see a lot of places and it's just like do deadlifts with an alternating grip.
Yeah, most gyms don't
And
care.
the reason why, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, by the way. It's okay to test and do that, but I think a majority of our time we should be, even with our grip, double overhand, not just because of the grip, stamina, and strength and ability you get from that, but also because of the symmetry, right? We are going to have some sort of imbalance if we continue to do that all the time when we deadlift. So we want to have symmetry. And then there's a whole nother concept of like styles of grip. Like we say, like when you hang on the bar, like really get your knuckles to the ceiling. Like we did false grip the other day, right? So we're talking about how we grip the rings and really rotate our wrist. Or when we grab the kettlebell, lock in, thumb to the pinky, knuckles down, get a power grip. We talk about like hook grip for Olympic lifting, where we wrap your thumb around the bar and your thumb is actually intentional strap on the bar to allow you to have a more efficient pull. So in the Olympic lifting world, the thumb is super valuable. It's actually a necessity to do Olympic lifting like that.
Well, grip, like the grip work we do, whether it, like no matter how diverse it is, whether it's like false grip, double overhand, pinch grip, the coolest thing I think with grip work is that it's the most easy to apply to everyday life. Like you could see like legit that transfer of like what you're training for grip strength into real life, like because you're always grabbing things, you're always gripping things. Like it's not. There's plenty of functional fitness that you see in action all the time, like sitting up and down, getting up and down, hinging, pushing, pulling. But the grip is, hard to say the most functional, but like you're going to use it all the time. You've got to also do the Trader Joe's test. I like the Trader Joe's test, where you, if you're at Trader Joe's, whatever grocery store you're at, you never take the cart to your car. You got to carry them all. Got to carry them all. All right, that's the. Unless you got like 6 kids, then you might not be able to do that.
Yeah, and I put like of my top 3 to 5 or 5 most valuable exercise, like farmer carries are by far, not because they just demand grip, but like they're a metabolic exercise. It's a complete holistic exercise for the entire body. So I just come back to a theme that you guys will always see here, and I'll always try to be creative with different apparatuses or ways that we can incorporate, having grip strength, grip endurance. We see a lot of times, like, I don't even know if he's going to probably listen, but like John Howard or Jackie, right? I called you guys out when we were doing, RDLs or our deadlifts. I'm like, don't use your hook grip, because I was intentionally not using it to build strength. And you see people who are really fit and strong, but all of a sudden, like when it comes to just isolating the grip, like that's where you really are going to start to see progress, because like these little intrinsic things, just like your hand or your feet, like we do the Foot Flex Friday, we'll talk about feet another day, are so important to the whole structure. Yeah. And that's really the idea of like why there's so much importance to it. And then lastly, we were talking about, this whole longevity concept and some of the bigger reasons scientifically of like why grip stuff in general is important when it comes to the physical fitness, is because of these neurons and basically these nerve endings within your hand. So if you just put that into like a very general thought, I have all these nerve endings, I got all this blood flow, I got all these ability to have sensations within my hand. That means that there's potential for my brain to have to do overload work to try to create these, to try to basically activate these receptors in my hands. So your brain, the cognitive brain, is working super hard as we're doing like a heavy farmer carry hold, let's say for 30 seconds. I'm just trying to hold on and squeeze as hard as I can. Like that is turning on your brain in areas so much more. It has to do overwork because, again, of all the nerve endings. So that's like the most simplest way you could think about like how it's good for cognitive function. And I think that's one of the bigger reasons why grip capacity work is important for us as we age. I'd be really curious to see a study. This would be my theory, but like if there is a study on individuals who are going through neurodegenerative diseases, and like, could there be a study of doing, neurologically beneficial exercises like grip stuff, in addition to other, food intakes and other activities that are good to actually prevent the root cause or slow down the process or potentially heal. This is just all theory, but again, these are things I would think about when it comes to like trying to create the holistic structure to, why there might be a problem to begin with. And then there's really a whole nother field of the importance of the energetic response in your hands when it comes to holistic healing practices. One, and again, this is where you got to like change your whole perspective out of like the medical model of like understanding that, there's a whole, like energy is everywhere and around us and so abundant that, our senses, our five senses can't even understand and comprehend or see or feel or even, understand from our hands. But we have so much energy that can be produced through our hands because of the nervous system response, but because of the field of energy that we can't see. And so there's practices such as Reiki or levels of Reiki. I would say Reiki is very, very lower level, but of how to transfer energy from your hand to an outside source. So Reiki or craniosacral or high-level forms of ASMR Reiki are really about how we can heal on a cellular level just from sending a frequency from our hand. So let's say, for example, if you're having, something going on with you and you're laying down on a table, like a Reiki individual knows how to transfer from thought form energy into their hands and then transfer that energy into your cellular level in your body. You have to be open to understanding that. And, I've experienced very minimal levels of that myself from doing like ceremonies and stuff like that, of like just the ability to, as someone's going through a process, like when it comes to body work, like just softening their energy by just maybe placing your hand on their shoulder, placing your hand on their heart, placing your hand on their hand, and just having that sensation of like, I'm there for you. I'm sending you love. I'm sending you compassion. I'm sending you a frequency to allow you to heal from within or whatever you're going through during your journey and your ceremony.
Yeah, no, the best way to like think about that on a very just like surface level is just thinking about the power of touch, right? Like it's always like from a young age, like the power of touch is like a way to comfort, to show love, to soothe. Like it's, you don't really even need to know like, the kind of the intricacies of like, the neurological and the energetic parts of it that you're talking about. Like there is, like it's already in us. Like we, whether it's like someone just placing a hand on you, like you said, like you it's in you. You could sense it. You could feel it. So I think that's, especially if this is a little bit, new or confusing to some, like I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, we got holistic hands, y'all, and you got to really think about, outside of the box of how that energy transfers. And I truly believe like there is even so much more with the energetic standpoint. Like I went through one of my first medicine journeys, and I did a higher dose within a setting, but like I could not understand why I felt energy in my hands it was just, I say it was like being like Spider-Man. Like you get your senses dialed to 11, like I could feel energy in my hands, like the vibration of energy was so intense. Like I've never felt anything like that before. And it wasn't because I was quote unquote tripping. Like I was very aware that I was experiencing something that happened because I was ascending my consciousness to a whole different plane where I could sense energy. So I think with that, we'll keep you curious about all that,
Holistic hands.
But I think let's come back to just a final reflection of some important things. One, just coming back to I come back to those questions, like how bad do I want to feel good? And if I'm going to do this, like, is this going to make me a better human? Like, if you're just talking about medicine, like when I take it, like, is this going to make me a better human being after I'm done taking it? Is this, my relationship to fitness, going to make me a better human being when I walk out of the doors? And is this thought that I'm going to create towards my physical body going to make me feel like a better human being, right? And so start with this gratitude towards your body, like, love your body as a gift and continue to have that compassion, and you'll probably make better choices that are going to allow you to continue to have growth for your holistic health. Yeah. And have gratitude for these little details that your body does, and your hands and your grip and your thumb is one of those many things. So
yeah, and those choices aren't going to feel like they take effort either. Like it's just going to be something you're naturally going to want to do and then just do all the time. Like if you just start with those practices of viewing it in the right way, it's like it's not a chore. No. It's just what you end up doing.
Love it. Love it. I know we talked a lot today, but you know, this is a fun one. I'm passionate about talking about, you know, little things like this. So
Let's stick hands.
awesome, guys. Well, love you guys. Appreciate it. Hey, have a great. If you're listening to this during the holiday, if you're listening on Thanksgiving, have a wonderful time with your family. If you're listening after Thanksgiving over the holiday weekend, love you guys. We're grateful for you for just being a part of this MFP family. All right. So we'll see you next week. All right. Keep up the great work. One love.
Happy Turkey Day.
One heart. Let's get together and eat some turkey.
That's right. End it with that.